and welcome to Ladies of Another View on Back. I'm Patty, not Mary, but I feel like I'm sitting in Mary's chair. I've been gone
It's
on.
so good to have you back.
Oh,
Yes,
it's great
it
to be
is.
back.
Yeah,
It is.
She was
It
on
is.
grandma maternity leave, and she's back, and we're just so grateful to have you back.
I was watching from Sleepy Eye, watching the show, and when Mary said Patty's on maternity leave, I just started laughing because I was for my daughter, watching her new baby and the two boys. That was fun, but it's good to be back, and I'm here with Carmen and Mary, obviously.
Hello.
And on today's show, we're going to be, later on in the show, we're going to go over to Afghanistan and talk about that and the southern border and the zoo for the lighter side. But first, in our first segment, I want to welcome to the show Brad Lena. He is going to talk
Hello.
about.
Hi, Brad.
Hi, Brad.
Greetings to you all.
Well, thanks for coming on today. And the reason we're having you on is you sent this to me in the mail. Your book, What Almost Dying Taught Me About Really Living. And
yes.
you're on your second life here, and it's very different from your first life, from what I understand. But tell everybody, how did this all begin with you? You were just going about your daily life, and everything suddenly changed.
Yes, it was rather ironic. 2 weeks before I experienced this stroke, I had a top to bottom physical, came through with flying colors. 2 weeks later, I was sitting on my couch and I stood up to run an errand or something, and bang, just, as in the blink of an eye, everything changed. There was no medical condition. There was no history of stroke on either side of my family. It was just 1 minute was one thing, and the very next second, it was something totally different.
Did you think you were having a stroke? What happened?
Well, when I first stood up, I thought I would just stood up. And then I thought maybe it was vertigo or some condition like that. But I lost all equilibrium. I was seeing, 3, 4, or 5 objects. The room was swirling around. And I knew it was something serious. I somehow managed to call my wife and 911, and I was taken to the hospital. But one of the unique things about this entire experience is that if I wasn't sleeping, I was alert and oriented throughout the process. So it really allowed me to not only observe what was around me, but to kind of, process what I was experiencing.
Wow.
And in the hospital, this concerned me a bit. They checked you out and sent you home and did not know that you had just had a massive stroke, right?
That is correct. The hospital I originally went to ran a series of routine tests and sent me home. Both my wife and I were, what's going on? This doesn't seem right. We went back the next day, and they took a CAT scan and said, well, we're going to admit him for observation. And I was never treated for a stroke symptoms or any diagnostic tests for that at all while I was there. It wasn't until my wife ran into our family doctor, who took a look at the CAT scan and said he's had a stroke and he's out of here. And that's when I transferred to another hospital, and they did the emergency surgery, which didn't work, and told my wife, say your goodbyes. But a few days later, I walked out of the hospital. An amazing experience.
Wow. So what was the surgery for then? Did you have some sort of blood clot?
Yeah, well, they did. It was massive swelling. The stroke, basically, my cerebellum exploded. The swelling in my cranium and brain was being contained by the skull structure itself. So they cut out a large section of my skull in the back of my neck to allow the brain to swell in an area that wouldn't crush the spinal cord. And then they drilled a hole in my head and put a tube down behind my eyeballs because my brain fluid could no longer drain. And it didn't work. The swelling continued. And that's when they told my wife, say goodbyes. But over the next 3 days, it just miraculously collapsed. And to a point where 3, 4 days later, I walked out of the hospital.
Oh my gosh.
You were at the point, though, where you thought, I'm ready to meet my maker, right? You didn't think you were going to make
Well,
it?
yeah, I mean, I knew that I was dying. I mean, I could feel various parts of my body shutting down, losing contact. I was still conscious and I could hear and I could look around, but um, I did not expect to walk away. In a way, as odd as it might sound, it was a real blessing because it gave me the opportunity to say, to look at my life, you know, because some deaths are tragic and instantaneous. And in this case, I could kind of say, what was important to me? What did I waste my time on? Those sorts of things. So that gave me a real opportunity and became the basis of writing the book.
And while you were in the hospital, did you have that kind of come to Jesus moment where you were looking at, uh-oh, I shouldn't have done these things and maybe I have another chance?
My experience was quite vivid. I am a Christian and I am a man of faith. And my experience was, if I wasn't in the judgment courtroom, I was pretty close. I didn't see my life flash before me, but I can remember this as vivid as anything. I saw so many instances in my life of scenarios when I could have been helpful. I could have been unselfish. I could have been cordial, or all these opportunities. And all the times I turned towards selfishness or self-interest, or I was too busy, or I couldn't be bothered. And the visual was like these little vignettes would like wash up on a beach and dissolve. And the next wave was like another one. And I don't know how long that went on, but it went on long enough to say, boy, I lived foolishly.
So were you able to talk to anyone at that time, or were you unconscious per se for those 3
No, I was conversant the entire time. If I was not sleeping, people could talk to me and I could respond.
Okay.
And that's why you were called an unusual patient, right? This wasn't typical.
No, the preferred term for in medicine when they don't understand a phenomena is unique. And that's what they classified me. But the nurses would whisper in my ear they thought it was something else.
And your son flew in to see you, and he was going out to Afghanistan, right? A Marine?
Yes, he was granted emergency leave, and they were on the eve of departing for Afghanistan. So he flew in for a day or two, and we met. And as I was stepping down out of recovery, we had a chance to visit and all of that. And I was so worried that I was going to be a distraction to my son, who had to have full attention on his situation in Afghanistan.
What year was this?
This was 2009, the spring of 2009.
Okay.
And then your son went over to Afghanistan right
Yeah,
after that, right?
he literally left from Pittsburgh from the hospital, flew back out to the West Coast or East Coast, I'm not sure, and was deployed to Afghanistan. So he was in Afghanistan a day or two later and was deployed for 9 months there.
And he's back home safely. Well, we're going to talk about what your second life looks like now, Brad. Right after, we're going to take a break first, and we'll be right back with Ladies of Another View on Beck. Welcome back to Ladies of Another View on Beck, and we are once again joined with Brad Lena, who is the author of What Almost Dying Taught Me About Really Living. We talked in the first segment about how this happened, your massive stroke, and I want to hear more about now what your second life looks like. You aren't 100% the same guy you used to be, but in some ways you're better, right?
Yeah, I think I'm the new and improved version.
Awesome.
Yes, in some ways, my deep conviction was to die a better man when my final death here on the planet takes place. That was job number one.
Wow. That's pretty prophetic. I mean, that's
that
a
gave me
good
goosebumps.
statement for everybody to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what changed then? Physically, you're not able to do as much. Am I understanding that?
Well, it's true, but it's been there was, for the first year after the event, there were severe limitations on cognitive ability. Multitasking was out the window. I wasn't able to. My memories were no longer connected to a chronology. I could remember, paying a bill, but was that last year's bill? Was that this month's bill? Who knew? So that ability to associate an action with a date or a time period was completely gone. I had to sleep a lot. I couldn't play music for quite a while. That there was no connection between my mind and my musical experience and education and my hands. I couldn't work at my job as a consultant anymore. So there were a lot of constraints, but it was tempered because when I was in rehab, I was observing people who literally were having to painfully relearn to take a step, to button a shirt, to tie a shoe, those sorts of simple functions. And I thought to myself, here I am walking and talking. Sure, I've got some problems, but if I blow this second chance, I'm the biggest fool on the planet, was pretty much what I decided.
I want to give a shout out to your wife because she was working full time and she would come home and you would go for walks every night. It got longer and longer. So here she is, her husband had a stroke, and that's a big enough problem for you too. And then you both had to deal with your son going away to Afghanistan. So it had to be a pretty difficult time back then.
Yes. And, whenever she was with me, she was the Rock of Gibraltar. And I was telling one of her intimate friends that, and she said, well, there were times when she was overwhelmed by it. I can remember every morning I woke up after the stroke, I would have a discussion with God, and it basically boiled down to take me now, this second, let him live. And I almost hesitate to tell you this because I had a very strange experience. And one of those times when I was begging that protection from God from my son, I distinctly heard a voice in my head. Hearing voices. But it said quite distinctly and a bit ironically, and the voice said to me, I took care of you, didn't I? I can take care of him. As silly as that sounds, but
silly.
No.
thank God he came home in one piece, and so many didn't. As a matter of fact, my wife learned that my son was a point man on patrols and minesweeper on a 60 Minutes TV show. They did a special on his show, The Gulf Company of 2-8 Marines, that at the time were taking the highest casualties in Afghanistan. And that's where my wife learned that our son was a minesweeper. So that was pretty dramatic, let me tell you.
Wow.
No
Oh
kidding.
my goodness.
No
Yes.
kidding. Well, and I don't want us to run out of time before we get to this, so I might be jumping the gun. But
Go ahead.
What was your thought process, and how did you progress then in learning how to what you define as really live after this? What did you do different? What are you doing now that takes your life in this new direction?
Well, I think it boils down to, everything that happens to us, good, bad, or indifferent, our loved ones, our family, our spouses, our careers, our health, our material well-being or possessions, somehow we think that we had it coming because we worked hard for it, or we deserve it or something. And what I learned, because everything was literally taken away from me in a second, that we don't possess any of those things. We just rent them from moment to moment, from second to second. And in my case, they were literally taken away. And that led me to think, am I using these gifts of my life as something for me, as for my self-interest, for my use? Or do I respect and love them and appreciate them for their own intrinsic value? And that's really what changed the way I live. I don't look at almost any situation from the same standpoint. I look at it from, boy, I have to respect this. I have to try to understand this. and I have to love what I've been given. Because when it's almost taken away and you come back and you get the opportunity to change, what's the cliche? Gratitude is the only attitude. So that realization of these aren't my possessions, they're my gifts. And if I don't appreciate these gifts, I got to do some serious rethinking.
Brad, you volunteered with men in jail, right?
That's correct. For 8 years, I was a volunteer instructor at the Allegheny County Jail for the incarcerated.
And you were giving back to them, and you talked to them about making a map. Tell us what that's about.
Well, the idea was a self-assessment. Whether you're in jail or in our day-to-day lives, we're so busy, we don't have time to really look at ourselves and find out where who we are and where we're at. And the analogy I used for the guys in jail, okay, you're in this program because you want to get off the crime merry-go-round. You want the opportunity to have a better way of living. Well, until you know who you are, and the analogy was where you are on a map, you're not going to be able to know how to get to who you want to be. And the analogy would be you're in Pittsburgh and you're going to Chicago. And so that we do a series of assessments about their values, what they thought about various things, and we do these worksheets. And so basically that gave them the snapshot of who they are, what they valued, how they acted, what their choices were, and over on the other side was where they wanted to be, that type of person. So it was an idea to kind of give them a personal assessment and a path towards the direction of becoming who they wanted to be.
Brad, I have a quick question with 1 minute left. Would you say you're happier now than you were before?
Oh, I would say definitely, because I appreciate things, and I can tell when something's foolish a waste of time or not. I mean, there are things that are important that will feed us body, heart, and soul, and there are things that are a waste of time. So I'm a happier man. I'm not Mr. Perfect. My wife will tell you that, but I think I'm a better and happier man than I was.
Well,
That
gosh,
is
it sure
awesome.
is interesting. I mean, you have such a story to tell, and we appreciate you coming on.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
For sure.
Yeah, thank you for coming on and sharing your story. And once again, the book is What Almost Dying Taught Me About Really Living.
Indeed.
We can all take a lesson from him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful lesson. It's deep and easy to read, though.